Now, if I'm going out for the day, I definitely want to be comfortable, and I might also want to bring something for a little bit of shelter. And you know what? With bushcrafting also comes tarp setups, and like I said, I like a hammock, so I'll bring my hammock straps. I have the E&O Atlas straps. I just keep them in this little sil nylon pouch. I'll bring my DD hammock, super light tarp, 10 by 10. And I also have a cheap Yukon Outfitters parachute, more like a parachute style hammock. I don't like to necessarily bring my full DD hammock, super light hammock. It's way too much and I don't want to damage it. Oftentimes when I'm out in the woods, I'll have a little fire, and the last thing I want to do is potentially burn my nice gear that I rely on for backpacking. So these will make the cut. I got to find a little stuff sack for them, but these definitely will make the bag. Now, if I'm bringing my tarp, I also need my tie downs and my stakes. So I just have a pouch here that contains some extra tie downs and all my stakes. Keeps them in a nice little tidy package, pretty lightweight, compact, and definitely a must if I'm going to be bringing that tarp. Now, when I'm going out there, I definitely like to remain comfy, so I'll bring myself a nice little inflatable pillow. This is the Sea to Summit Aeros pillow. I actually really like this. It's very small, lightweight, doesn't take up too much space in the bag, so definitely worth keeping in the mix. I like to kind of experiment. I built myself a nice little, I'd say, bushcraft chair. Essentially what you do is you set up a tripod or maybe 2 legs and lean them against a standing tree, and I can sling this between the trees and it gives me a nice place to sit down. So I tend to like to bring this with me and set it up if I can and if I have the time. It's a little bit on the heavy side because this is a big, thick, heavy 1000D Cordura treated piece of canvas, but at the same time it's durable and it's really gonna give me a nice place to sit down, so I'll bring this with me. Just another piece of that Cordura material. I really like to take a piece of material and lay it down on the ground for a few reasons. One is it gives me a place to stage all my equipment while I'm out there. So it's the same place I put my stuff down every single time I put it down on here. It actually prevents me from losing things, helps me stay organized, and keeps my stuff off the damp ground. And 2 is, if I'm ever really carving a piece of wood and I want to save the shavings, or I want to whittle something down and get all the shavings that I can use to start my fire, it's nice to have a piece of fabric to do that, so that you can kind of keep everything dry and off the moist ground, and really give you a good head start to starting your fire. So good piece of cloth, and in this case durable Cordura nylon, definitely a good little thing to have with you. A lot of times I'll be working in a muddy area and I just want to have some knee pads I can throw on so I don't get my knees all wet or completely filthy. And a lot of times with bushcraft tasks, you're up and down and up and down. Maybe you're kneeling around a fire, and just to have some quality knee pads is actually kind of nice. So these are made by the company Alta. I've purchased these basically by the recommendations of Nut and Fancy. He did a nice review on these, and so I picked them up basically because of him. These are in the ATAX camo pattern, and they're pretty good. I actually must say I pretty much use these all the time. You can tell that these are getting really beat up, but good quality, reasonably comfortable, and totally worth throwing in the pack if you can fit them. Got to plan ahead and be able to maintain that gear. Might as well throw in the Worksharp field sharpener. I also like to bring some Froglube. I probably won't bring the whole jar, but I'll at least take my rag and laden it up pretty good and put this in like a Ziploc bag or something, just so that I have some nice food grade grease to keep my bushcraft tools in good working order, and in case they get wet or dirty, I can maintain them while I'm in the field. Cordage is generally a must, and so I'll bring a roll of bank line. This is kind of thin, but at the same time I have a lot of it and it's very strong. It takes up a little bit less space than paracord, I mean, I know that there's a, you know, unfortunately a nice hollow core here, which, you know, is unused space and, you know, could potentially, I don't know, maybe I could consolidate this onto something smaller, but at the same time, you know, it does what I need to, fits in the bag, not too big, and gives me plenty of cordage to play with if I need it. The ability to cook or at least heat up some water is usually a pretty good idea. So I haven't really used this yet in a on a fire, but this is a nice little Stanley Kit. Has a couple of plastic cups that come with it. So, you know, if you want to make some coffee or tea or something like that while you're out there chilling out by the fire, definitely a pretty good handy thing to have. And at least once you remove the cups, you know, at least this stainless steel container can be used on the fire. So I'm going to give this a run this summer. I mean, I've used it, but I haven't cooked with it yet. So I'm going to give this thing a shot, see how it does. Whether you're backpacking, you're hanging out in the woods bushcrafting, at least a reasonable amount of medical supplies is definitely a good idea. I mean, let's really be serious here. We're swinging frickin' blades around. The potential for injury or really smashing yourself or dinging yourself up pretty good is definitely there. And so, you know, just to have at least a little bit of medical supplies is not the worst idea. I pray that I never cut myself bad enough that this kit won't handle it, but I guess you never know. But at least I have something with me in case I get a little cut or scrape or, you know, even a decent cut. So definitely a medical kit is a wise idea. I don't necessarily like to rely on gloves when I work with my hands, but having a good pair of gloves is always a good idea. You know, these particular gloves, and I've talked about them before, are actually made for rappelling out of helicopters, and so they have a very high tolerance for heat, over 600 degrees. So where I am working around fire and have hot pots and stuff like that, I just like to throw these on to protect my hands. It gives me the, you know, less potential of accidentally burning myself when I'm working around the fire or handling these, you know, hot pots or cooking things. And so, you know, I like to just throw these in my bag and have them with me. And these smell like fire. They smell great. You know, kind of season the rest of my gear, I guess you could say. You never know when you're going to need the facility. So between my shovel to dig myself a nice little pit and some toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and wipes, at least I know if I gotta go, I got it covered. I like experimenting with different ways to make a fire. So here I have a pretty good fire kit. Has a whole bunch of different methods inside. Here I have an empty Altoids tin with a little hole. I use this to make char cloth, and I try to keep up with it. Since I found that char cloth is one of the best tinders to get your fire started, I've been making char cloth on a regular basis, keeping my supply up. So this is what I use to make it, and then I have a couple containers that I keep it in. And then this is Trioxane, and then some little, I guess you call them like wet fires, or I forget exactly what the name of these are. But anyway, just some different methods to starting fire. And in combination with these and the ferro rod that I have on my knife, this really gives me some options and different ways to get my fire started. I kind of like to bring this little bag with me. It has one of those cheap, crappy ponchos in it, but I also loaded it up with plastic bags, some foil, different things that'll help me out in case I need, you know, a little container or to put some leftover food that I'm eating or a snack, or you never know. Just to have a couple containers and, you know, the ability to throw these things. I mean, look at how tiny this is. Barely takes up any space, super lightweight. Just to have it in there is kind of useful, and I tend to keep it with me.